Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host Thomas Tyree from On the Hot Podcast. Today, I have some bonus content for you guys. The bonus content we'll be covering today will be in the sport of boxing. In today's bonus segment, I'll be sharing my thoughts on Tszyu versus Sebastian Fundora officially being announced next in the sport of boxing. So, the news broke 3 days ago. For the first PBC pay-per-view under the Amazon Prime banner, Tszyu will no longer face Keith Thurman in the main event of the first ever PBC card under the Amazon Prime banner. Instead, Tszyu will have a new fresh opponent, and the new fresh opponent will be Sebastian Fundora. And Tszyu will now be defending his WBO 154-pound title in the main event against Sebastian Fundora. And also, the WBC world title will be on the line as well. The vacant WBC world title will be on the line. So this will be a unification fight. And this was to happen all because Keith Thurman was ruled out due to an injury and his sideline, unable to compete for this main event pay-per-view card taking place in the sport of boxing in a week's time. So, for anyone wondering out there watching and listening that follows boxing, Jermell Charlo, the former undisputed super welterweight champion at the 154-pound division, has officially been stripped of all 4 of his titles. As you guys know, he did climb up to 2 weight divisions to fight Canelo Alvarez at a shot to become the super middleweight champion, the undisputed super middleweight champion at the 168-pound division last fall. He was then stripped one by one of his titles, first that being the WBO title that Tszyu now holds, and the rest, the WBA, WBC, IBF world titles, all have been vacated due to Jermell Charlo not fighting his mandatories at the 154-pound division. But as I digress, to me personally, thinking about this, I do believe that Tszyu versus Sebastian Fundora is a much better fight than what Tszyu versus Keith Thurman would have been. And I do believe this is going to be a scrappy fight between Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora. I do believe that this could be one hell of a fight taking place at the super welterweight division in a week's time on the first PBC pay-per-view under the Amazon Prime banner. Now this fight becomes a unification fight with Tszyu officially defending his WBO world title and Fundora and Tszyu fighting for the vacant WBC world title as well. If you guys know, Tszyu versus Keith Thurman wasn't even for Tszyu's WBO world title. So we're getting a unification fight, and I think we're getting a much better fight. But if you take away that one loss that Sebastian Fundora suffered last spring when he got knocked out, you would say this fight is a 50-50 fight. And I truly believe it still is a 50-50 fight. This fight could go either way. I'm leaning towards Tszyu, but I do believe that Fundora could give Tszyu a run for his money next Saturday night. And it's not like Sebastian Fundora was just thrown on. He was actually fighting for the vacant WBC world title on this card as originally. So Fundora has been in shape. I am expecting a one hell of a fight between these two respective fighters. You have Sebastian Fundora, who stands at 6'6" and has no problem fighting on the inside against anybody at the 154-pound division. Then you have Tszyu, who has it all as a boxer. He has the grit, the determination. He really doesn't make a lot of mistakes in that boxing ring. I think this could be one hell of a matchup at the 154-pound division in the sport of boxing next. But pivoting towards how I feel about Keith Thurman unable to compete on this card due to the fact that he is now injured. To me personally, this could be the end of Keith Thurman. And I said months ago when this fight was announced for PBC, that being their main event as their first impression with Amazon Prime of Keith Thurman versus Tszyu, I knew from the get-go that Keith Thurman was only there for maybe one more big payday in his boxing career. The man has not been active, and I think this could have led to his injury. He's only had in a total of 7 years, he's only had a total of 3 fights. Inactivity eventually catches up to you in this sport of boxing. You cannot go through the game for the sport of boxing without being active. And I think injuries caught up to Keith Thurman, and it's unfortunate that he is not cleared to compete for this fight. But I just feel like it would have been a one-sided fight in favor of Tszyu, with that being a catchweight fight, and Tszyu wasn't even set to defend his WBO world title in the main event of that fight. So I do believe that Keith Thurman, after he suffered that elbow injury against Danny Garcia when those two respective fighters fought back in 2017, that elbow injury made Keith Thurman, I would say that injury declined his game, and he never was the same fighter, as you guys know. His power slowly vanished. I mean, he was still there. He could still touch up on his opponents, but he just didn't have that pop. He didn't have that power anymore after he suffered that elbow injury. So you can see Keith Thurman's hunger for the sport of boxing has died down. Again, 7 years with only 3 fights. What else does there really have to say about Keith Thurman's love for the sport of boxing? He's obviously a former world champion, former WBA, former WBC world champion. Nobody's ever going to take that away from him. But Keith Thurman being 35 years of age now, looking at it now, this could be the end of Keith Thurman. And hasn't fought also since 2022 and February 2022, correct me if I'm wrong, when he fought Mario Barrios. So I do believe this could be the end of Keith Thurman, but I wish nothing but the best for him. But that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off, and I'll see you guys on next week's episode.